The Institute doesn't just break children, they use them. And when they're all used up, they're thrown away like trash. That's not horror, that's the policy. This is the Literary Tailor, where we have great books that inspire better conversations. And today, it's about The Institute by Stephen King. The Institute by Stephen King is more of a thriller than a horror. The horror is asked what's out there. The thriller, which this book is asking what people are truly capable of. And this book explores it by using adults, exploiting these kids and treating them less than human. They're not, hell, even animals are treated a lot better than these kids. And that's what makes them a lot more scary, because these adults just don't give a damn about these kids. It's what they possess is truly what they want, and that is psychic abilities. So let's get into The Institute by Stephen King. The boy they couldn't make disappear. Before we talk about the machine, The Institute, we need to talk about what it was built to break. Luke Ellis is the main character of The Institute. He's an 11-year-old boy with a very gifted mind. In the beginning, he was accepted to 2 universities at the age of 11. One of them was MIT. But the Institute took him anyways. Well, they actually killed his parents as well to make sure that he doesn't have a home to go back to should he ever escape. But they take him because he has psychic abilities that they desire, that they need to inflict their own agenda upon. Because what they are willing to do to these kids is truly exploit them for their powers, because they want that power to be theirs alone. When Luke arrives to this institute, he's thrown into a new world, as a lot of main characters are. His parents are dead. His whole life is completely turned upside down. He's in a new world where he has to fend for himself. He has to fight for survival each day at this institute. He doesn't know why he's there at the first place, but he learns quickly the real reason why he's there. He forms a bond with all the kids because these kids are truly the ones that they can only gravitate towards themselves, because it's them against the Institute in the end. But what Luke does is he fights back. He doesn't allow the Institute to break him. He doesn't allow anyone at these adults to make him a shell of a person, a shell of a boy that he was in the beginning. He fights back to the bitter end. He fights back to protect all the children that are stuck in this institute. And with his IQ, he's able to outsmart a lot of these adults. And these adults aren't just normal teachers, normal scientists. They have military training, special forces training as well. So they know how to torture, exploit, and do everything under the sun that they were learned, that they taught as well in the military. So Luke was almost against the military itself in some ways. But what makes Luke so special was he didn't escape from this institute just because of his superpowers or his powers of telekinesis. He escapes by using his own brain, his own mind, himself, truly to escape this hellhole on Earth, if you can say that. What Luke does is escape from hell and he knows that he needs to rescue the kids as well to help them escape the hell as well. He's even willing to maim himself. He cuts a tracker on his own ear just to fully escape the handcuffs, the binding that this school, or not, this institute had on him. He cuts it off to escape the bondage of this institute. Luke is lucky enough to meet an adult on his escape because he's able to meet Tim. Tim plays a role in this book, maybe not from the start, but he becomes a major adult, a major character for Luke because he becomes the only adult to believe Luke's story of what's happening at this institute. And Tim's ready to actually confront all the adults. He's ready to go to battle for Luke, with Luke. He's ready to make sure that this institute shuts down completely so it doesn't harm any more kids. And Luke's right there with him, ready to do the fight. Ready to fight all the adults that made his life hell for the past month or two. He's ready for battle, and he's ready for all the bloodshed that may occur, because he knows that these adults have justice to be served, that they need to be brought to justice because the crimes they are committing need to be highlighted. They need to be explored, exploited as much as the adults did as well to these kids. These adults need to come crashing down as the institute itself. And Luke was ready to do just that. Luke Ellis isn't a superhero, not Superman, Batman. He's just a 12-year-old boy that just happens to have a superpower of telekinesis. But he doesn't allow this telekinesis to define him. He doesn't let this institute define who he is. He, in the end, defines who he is on the inside and out. He's the one that they can't break at the end. What the institute couldn't take away from them. Luke could fight because he was the only one that had a self worth fighting for. The kids, the other kids, weren't so lucky. Luke wasn't the only one stuck in this prison, this hellhole that is the institute. We also meet other children like Kalisha, Iris, Nick, and a lot more kids that were kidnapped to come to this institute. And they were used up like batteries. Their superpowers were brought to a max until they were forced into another part of the institute called the back house, where their powers will be exploited even more. One of the things I should mention is the reason why these adults are using these kids. Well, they want these superpowers to assassinate people. That's correct. They want these powers to kill people. That's the true horror of these adults, as well as them torturing, exploiting these kids. Once they have you on their list, you are good as dead, because how can you battle? How can you combat these psychic abilities? And the adults knew that. They would put these kids through rigorous examinations. They would dunk kids in a tank until they can't hold their breath any longer. And they would keep them pushing back up, only to do it again. This is just a form of punishment. They would also use physical assault to make sure that these kids know their place among the institute. One thing that made me guess more about the institute as well is the kids were almost given an opportunity to smoke and drink. There was like a vending machine, if you will, where if they acted nice or appropriate for these adults, they would be given a token. and where they can use this token to buy things like cigarettes and alcoholic drinks. So these kids almost had to grow up real quickly. It was like a similar. It was like a similar thing to Pinocchio's island, where the boys were turned into a donkey, or the children were turned into a donkey, where these kids were shown as adults, as well as possessing a childlike body. Their innocence, their mind, was very much more mature, more adult, because of this institute, because of this new way of life that they had to live, had to survive. These kids had to grow up real quick from a young age. Even a boy that was age 8 had to grow up really fast. And that, if you think about that, imagine your own kid or someone you know that's only 8. He was tortured, exploited, pretty much everything you can think of. He was forced to deal upon. And he's forced to become a more mature, more of a broken part of him at a young age 8, and lower and higher. So these kids were definitely more broken at the end. They weren't the same. They weren't their same selves at the beginning. They were almost as broken, completely shellless, or just broken. At the end, that's what the true tragic. Even though these kids were able to find a way to survive and to escape, the scars that they still possessed by the end will never fade, will never go away. And that's a true tragic for these kids in their ending. The Institute can extract a child's power, but it can't take away another's ability to see another's suffering, their own pain, and say, I see you. Innocence isn't lost, it's taken. Then there's Avery Dixon, a 8-year-old, maybe younger boy, but he's the most powerful one, the most powerful kid in the Institute. Stephen King makes him likable, lovable even, because he has this innocence. But we, the readers, watch this innocent go away quickly. When we first meet Avery, he's a young boy that is thrown into a new world, I guess. I don't know why I keep on saying that, but it's just strange to see a very young boy. Unlike Luke and a lot of kids that were either 10, 11, or 12, or even higher, he's still a single-digit age boy. He's left almost with no protection. He's left to his own devices, if you will. He's not given parental or anything, guidance or anything. He's forced to grow up at age 8. As mentioned, he is the most powerful to him, so the adults exploit him the most. They know that his power is a true power keg, and they want that power keg to do their own bidding, if you will. So Avery becomes a very high priority list among the adults. What makes almost a heartwarming moment is Luke's relationship to Avery. He becomes almost like a brother figure in a way. He becomes his only protector. He allows Avery to sleep in his bed because Avery is afraid to sleep alone. He doesn't want to be alone. He wants to be friendly with everyone. Even when some kids were bullying him, he still wants to continue having a positive relationship with everyone, at least all the kids. He has this true innocence that he only possesses in this book, which makes him such an important and likable character to readers. And it's heartbreaking to see that innocence get crushed, beaten, pretty much destroyed on a daily basis as we watch Avery being exploited and almost destroyed through these experiments that the adults inflict upon him. And as he continues to experience this exploitive nature by the Institute, Avery is forced to age a lot quicker than a lot of kids his age. Once having a bedroom full of cartoons and superheroes, it almost evaporates when he is moved into the back house, where his childlike innocence is no longer there. What we see or what we read about Avery is a adult that just happens to be 8 years old, because he, as well as tortured by these adults as well. One scene in particular, he's hit with stun guns, or like a bad thing, if you will, that shocks people. These adults hit him everywhere on his body, and even threaten to go even lower if he doesn't talk where Luke escaped to. He was almost willing to go through this pain to protect Luke. Just think about that. An 8-year-old boy was willing to experience even more pain to protect a friend, probably his only best friend, in order to help Luke fulfill this idea. This fulfills this, I don't want to say prophecy, but the ability to bring this institute crashing down. He's even betrayed by some of the kids, well, at least one kid, who happens to become the ear for the adults. She reveals Luke's plan, or if you will, and Avery is the one that takes the blunt of this rage from the adults. So Avery was forced to age, not because he wanted to, but the adults at the Institute forced him to. Avery Dixon is an 8-year-old boy, but he's the oldest one in the book. The Institute made sure of that. How ordinary people do extraordinary harm, and others that just couldn't. The children are the heartbeat of this book. The adults are the ones that stay with you long after you close that book. Miss Sigsbee is the one who operates the Institute. She's the higher up. She's the one that runs the Institute. If I can compare her to any character, I would probably compare her to Umbridge in Harry Potter. That's how bad she is. She's not afraid to get dirty or even physical with these kids. She doesn't care if they're Avery's age or anyone else's age, like Luke or anyone else. She'll hurt you in more ways than others, rather be physically, mentally, spiritually, anything. Anything you name it, she'll do to you. And there's other staff, like Zeke, who's almost like a pit bull for Miss Sigsbee, where he inflicts all these pain, these experiments, or help with these experiments, if I can say, on these kids. He's not afraid to slap or even punch a kid straight in the face just for talking back. He doesn't care if these kids start crying or wanting to go home, or even if they started bleeding. He doesn't care. And he's just one of the adults. There's many adults that have the same ideology, the same feeling that these kids aren't just normal kids. These kids are somewhat monsters in their ways. They're not even human, that these kids are. These adults just don't care about these kids, but they do care about those powers that these kids possess. And they'll use these kids up as quickly as a battery and just throw them away once that power evaporates. These adults are the true monster. They're more scary than Pennywise, Cujo, pretty much a lot of horror villains that Stephen King often writes, because these adults are very much real. You can almost see these adults in our daily life. These adults that will go home after a shift, joke with their friends, have a beer, smoke, whatever they'll do, but only to return to do horrible deeds, horrible things to these kids. That's what makes these adults so terrifying, because something about them just feels too real. But There's one adult at the Institute that changes the system just a bit because she actually has a conscience. She actually does care about these kids. Her name is Maureen. She's like a custodian where she has this connection, this relationship with all the kids, especially Luke, where she forms almost like a maternal bond with Luke, despite obviously Luke not being related to her at all. She has this way to connect with these kids. At the first, she wasn't as who she was, where she was the ear to the other adults. These kids would any secrets or anything that they have, they would tell her, and she would tell the adults. But as mentioned, she changes her tune a bit. She changes because she has a conscience. She's not doing this job just because she enjoys hurting these kids. She's doing this job just to help her son go through college. Think about that. She understands that these kids are just kids in the end. They don't deserve to be punished or physically punished. That they have this innocence that they are trying to keep within themselves, but the Institute is taking that away from them. And Maureen sees this, and she knows that she needs to be the one that stands up in the end. She's the one that needs to be the adult in the room. She needs to be the one to put her foot down and say to the adults and her colleagues that what they're doing is truly wrong. And she does that. She actually plays a big role in Luke's escape and his ability to defeat and bring down the Institute at the end. Unfortunately, her sacrifice is what makes this even possible, where she's able to have almost a last laugh at the end, where she tells these adults that she'll see them in hell, and I think that statement may be true at the end. The staff in the Institute aren't just the monsters in your nightmare, no, they're the managers of your nightmare. And Maureen shows that they choose their own actions in the end. 4 forces: Luke, the adults, Avery, and the other kids. Which of those 4 hit you the hardest? Which of those 4 hit you the least? Comment below, because I think this could inspire another great conversations to have. Comment below because I would like to know. I also will have the link to this book in the description below, so make sure if you have not read this book to check it out. I have a few affiliates in the links below, so check those out too. I also will have the link to this book in the description below, so make sure if you have not read this book to check it out. I also started the Literary Tailor podcast because I thought I couldn't just talk about books in just one video. I needed to talk about books in a podcast form as well. I wanted to keep the conversation going because each book deserves more conversations in the end. The Literary Tailor podcast, where we have great books that inspire better conversations. Check it out. Check out my literary fitting as well, where I provide you a 3-book reading plan to help you through some struggles, whether it be grief, depression, anxiety, or other issues. I provide you the 3 books that you can look at to help you through these tough times, because in the end, I think books are a lot cheaper than prescriptions that we can get at the doctors. I recommend checking that out as well. The Institute was a very different Stephen King book. It didn't have all the gore, scary things that a lot of his books have. But what it does show is a horror reality that we can't escape fully. It shows us that true horror that some adults are willing to do for their own goal. We also see how children's innocence can be easily taken away by these adults or other factors. We need to protect these innocence within our children. We need to allow them to be children. I think that's what this book shows us, that we need to allow these children to grow up on their own terms and to explore the world in not a mean-spirited place as the Institute shows us. These children deserve the ability to grow up, no matter if they're special or not. They deserve to be children at the end, and that's what the Institute shows us. I'm Zach, and this is the Literary Tailor, where we have great books and even better conversations. Until then, guys, happy reading, guys.